to see you. And yes, please, everyone, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Not quite everyone has filled out the poll yet. So just going to give you a chance to do that. The topics that we said we would cover today are supporting mentees with a career transition, navigating a difficult conversation, and addressing power imbalances and unconscious bias. So which of those are you most interested in talking about today? I will cover all three, don't worry, but it's just a little bit helpful to know where we're going with all of that. Okay, just looking for one or two more people to have a chance to fill out the poll, and then I'll close and share the results. So you've got a couple more people coming into the room. Okay, so again, welcome to those who've just joined us. Please fill out the poll. This will help me know which topic to maybe spend a little bit more time on in the presentation. And also just to let you know that while the first part of this event, which is the presentation, is being recorded, the rest of the presentation or the rest of the session will not be recorded so that we can have a full conversation as a group. So I've got about half of you have filled out the poll. I know that sometimes people join and they're not able to fill out the poll initially. You might be rushing from another meeting and on your phone, but hoping to just get one or two more responses for the poll. And again, welcome to those who've just joined, and please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Okay, I know that everyone's keen to get started, so we'll go ahead and we'll end the poll. And just to share that the most energy today, okay, seems to be a problem with sharing the poll, so I'll just tell you that the most energy was around addressing power imbalance and unconscious bias. There's also some interest in navigating a difficult conversation. And as I said, I promise we'll cover all three of those today. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll go to the next slide, please. There are three objectives for today. We will be covering frameworks for navigating difficult conversations with confidence, talking about some strategies to address unconscious bias and power imbalances, and some actionable steps for supporting mentees who are interested in transitioning their careers. The key reminder in a lot of this is that the mentee is in the driver's seat, and we want to empower them to lead the process. And that is something that isn't usual maybe in all of our working relationships, that this mentorship is really about empowering the mentee. And that actually in and of itself will help address some of that unconscious bias and some of the traditional power imbalances. Next slide, please. So I know some people said they were interested in navigating difficult conversations with confidence. So if you were able to join us last time, or you're able to watch the recording, we talked a lot about creating safe spaces. And that one of the most important ways to ensure that you can hold a difficult conversation is for both people to know that what they're saying is something the other person will hear, and that this is a safe space to raise challenging questions or things that are uncomfortable. And the first step of that is agreed upon ways of communicating. One of the ways to do that is actually just to very simply say, we're from different cultures. We are going to allow each other to redo something. So maybe I start talking about something and I can see that it's just not working and I'm digging myself into a hole, and I can say, please forget what I just said. Let me redo that. And that could be for something simple, but it could also be for maybe something you really want to do in a difficult conversation. If you've done it for something that's quite minor, it feels more comfortable for everyone to do it when you're having these difficult conversations. You can also focus on receiving the feedback and saying, I need to know how this is working for you. Again, as you build that for the smaller things, it will become easier to do it for the difficult conversations. It's not a good strategy to wait until you're giving really challenging feedback for someone and then say, oh, so how did you feel about that, right? You want to ask that and build that safe space foundation early on before you get to the kind of really challenging conversations. And that's all about building trust and rapport. It's also about having boundaries. In the last session, we talked a lot about the need for both mentees and mentors to feel comfortable with the boundaries they set. No one's required to share everything. You can keep it as professional as you want. You can talk about how all of the different aspects of your lives converge, if that's something that you're looking to get guidance on or to share. Another key part of this foundation is about confidentiality, both of you knowing that what the other person's saying can be shared with others or should not be shared with others, and being really clear and going back to that trusting that the other person will keep that confidentiality. There's a lot unsafe spaces around active listening, and I'll share some resources on active listening. And that is really about not multitasking, not waiting for the person to stop talking so you can share what you want to say, but really listening. And if you are in a situation where your videos don't work, so my last session with my mentee, my bandwidth has been very spotty, and I had to ask to turn my video off. And I knew that I had to pretend that she could still see me and I could still see her, and that we could have that conversation in real time. And psychological safety, knowing that it's safe to ask questions. And so some of this is, as the mentor, being a bit vulnerable, maybe sharing some things and sort of showing by example that you trust the other person, that you're willing to share something with them so that they feel comfortable sharing something with you. During the actual difficult conversation itself, before you respond with your thoughts, summarize what the other person said and reflect on that, particularly feelings they've shared, that, oh, you were talking about your last job, and what I heard was that you were particularly concerned about how other members of the team saw your work and the quality of your work, and you felt belittled. Is that right? Do I understand what you've just shared with me? And to ask clarifying questions about that. Well, what made you think that? Do you think that this has happened before? You can ask a lot of questions and try to dig into what might be the root cause of the problem. Be sure that you do not tell them how they should be feeling or diminish their experience in any way. Okay, this is about you, again, actively listening, and you should just be reflecting what you've heard and be this open and safe space for them to share. And you can ask for their response. So if you've had to give some feedback on something and said, well, I would like to see you try this, you can say, how do you feel about that? But also at the end of the conversation, we're talking about receiving feedback, but asking for their thoughts and saying, how do you feel about what we've discussed? What are your thoughts on what we've just discussed? And this is really important. Ask if they think the conversation is over. So do you feel this conversation is complete? Would you like some time to reflect and for us to meet and talk about this again? So maybe at our next meeting, or maybe we set up an additional shorter meeting to reflect, because a lot of times when we're having these difficult conversations, most people can't simply fully reflect and respond in the moment, and giving them the space to have the conversation go over time is a really important way of navigating difficult conversations. We'll move on to the next slide. So I know this is where a lot of the energy for this group is, which is strategies to address unconscious bias and power imbalances. Now, I will just say a lot of what we just talked about is really important for this. And that's why I spent a lot of time on that slide, because there are things that we can do to work on ourselves and making sure that we are creating that safe space foundation. Regularly checking ourselves and our assumptions and saying, okay, so I heard this or I saw this and I thought is that fair? What does that say about me? Why did I have that response? Would other people have that response? Flipping the situation. So if I said this and someone responded that way, how would that make me feel? How would I feel if I was sharing this and someone didn't believe me? How would I feel if I felt dismissed? You can always reach out to someone in your network that you trust. It might be a family member or a friend even, and say, oh, I'm a little bit concerned that I might be having this unconscious bias in this way. I don't know how to address it. What are your thoughts? I'm worried that there's a really big power imbalance. You can ask those people for feedback. And again, with the power imbalance with mentorship, remind yourself and remind the mentee that mentee is in the driver's seat. This is about what the mentee needs, and you're there to support them. The mentee is the one making the decisions. You are not telling the mentee what to do. You are there to help the mentee decide what they want to do. So tools for this, we talked a little bit about active listening, mutual respect, all of the tools that come into creating a safe space. Curiosity, right? You want to be curious about this other person and what you're going to be able to learn. We also talk a lot sometimes about a growth mindset. So this is the idea that we will continue to learn, we will continue to grow as people. We aren't set as who we are now for the rest of our lives, and we can uncover the unconscious biases that we have. We all have them, and we can work on those as we grow and uncover them and try to address them. Also, being human with other people, sharing your insecurities and your vulnerabilities is a great way to help right that imbalance and also help people feel heard. So these are just some of the strategies you can use to address unconscious bias and power imbalances. And on the next slide, you will receive these slides. I've shared some resources with you. So there's a Harvard Business Review quick article on active listening, but Positive Psychology also has a quite in-depth list of how to practice active listening. They also have a really good article on cognitive bias, which is a little bit larger than unconscious bias, and they list a lot of resources for that. And then Diverse Educators has a very good toolkit of unconscious bias resources. So I recommend all of those to you for people who are interested in working a bit more on that. And if we go to the next slide, we did say that we would go through career transitions. This may not be something your mentee is looking at now, but it may be something that comes up in the next couple of sessions. So we do just want to sort of talk through with you how you would help someone who's interested in a career transition. What I will say is if this is something that someone wants, you will not be able to tackle this in a single session. And this is the kind of thing that lends itself to this full 6-month mentorship process, because the first step is sort of assessing together where your mentee is, working together to figure out what skills does your mentee already have, that person's interest, their values and goals, and kind of their personality type. And by that, I don't mean kind of a Myers-Briggs assessment, but what do they enjoy and what do they find challenging in a work environment? So is this somebody who is really extroverted and they don't enjoy being stuck at their desk all day? Is this someone who really likes to work with their hands? They don't want to be tied down to a desk. Are they somebody who would like to never do public speaking for the rest of their life? Are they someone who is secretly hoping to become a spokesperson? So you want to kind of align and look at the skills, the interests, the values, the personality type, and compare who this person is with the kinds of jobs they think that they want. And fundamentally, what you're looking for here is to make sure that this is a good fit for them, that this is the kind of job that they want to, because it may be that you look into this and they thought they wanted to transition to management, but then they realize that they really want to be outdoors all the time, and so management's going to be inside in a lot of meetings, and that's actually not going to fit well with their personality type, and it may be that there's a different kind of transition that they would want to do. So the next step is, once you've decided where they're going to transition to, what their strengths are, you need to identify the gaps. So you're here, your mentee is here, they want to go over here. Where are the gaps? What do they need to obtain and excel at to do the job that they want to start doing? How could that be learned? How could those experiences be had? Is it something where there are people they're already working with in their organization they could ask to collaborate more with and get those skills by working with that team? Also thinking about a timeline. So if they need to go back to school to attain a certification or an online resource, or they need to go back and get a different degree in order to move to this transition, that's going to be a different kind of timeline to, I just need to brush up on my PowerPoint skills. So who could the mentee talk to about these gaps? I mean, people who are currently in the kind of careers the mentee is interested in, to kind of understand, well, this job advertisement said that I needed a master's, but do I really need to go back to school for this? Or will my job experience be enough? And so also trying to reassess how those gaps could be filled, and not just assuming that what you might see on a piece of paper is the right one. The third step is about setting up support. So career transitions, like any transition in life, are hard, and they are best done with a support system. So brainstorm with your mentee about how your mentee can help keep a positive growth mindset, a learning mindset throughout this whole transition process and in the beginning of this new career. Who are the people that can socially and emotionally support the mentee through the process? And what other types of support are needed? So we talked about possibly going back to school, you might need financial support. So thinking about the setup for that support. And next slide, for the final step, you want to support the mentee in creating a plan. And that's going to combine all the previous steps, all of the information, to think about long-term and short-term goals for the transition, how the gaps that have been identified can be addressed to reach these goals. What is the plan for reaching the goals? What is the timeline? Again, talking about who to reach out to talk to at each of these steps, expanding your mentee's network. Is there somebody, if this is going to be a really long timeline that's going well beyond September, is there an accountability partner that your mentee can identify if it can't be you? As we look beyond that, and again, talking about that support system. So really trying to help your mentee line this up and come up with a really easy, clear plan, because it won't be an easy process. We want them to feel supported and that they have the information that they need to make that transition. And with that, I will say thank you, and we will end the presentation, and we will be going to collective wisdom, where we will again end the recording and be talking as a group about our shared experiences and sharing questions. So thank you all so much for listening.